just a few days away from Canada taking to the pitch for the game against Romania. And Cyle Larin, by the way, has left the Canadian camp for family reasons. We know earlier in a press conference, Jesse Marsch said his wife is due any minute now. But what maybe raised some eyebrows is that Theo Bair has actually been called in as a replacement instead of Daniel Jebison. Wheels, what are you hearing that is, the decision behind Theo Bair as opposed to Daniel Jebison?
Well, it sounds like Jebison's dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury. You can interpret that as you please, based upon how things played out with Jebison's injury with a personal trainer and how the club has reacted ever since. At times like this, clubs will dig in and ensure that their player is to the best of their ability, 100%. And I think they're just trying to look out for the player right now. And they just look at this international break, which is an awkward one in fairness. At the start of September, the European domestic season is just firing up. And if the player is carrying anything whatsoever, I just think that all sides want to proceed with a little bit of caution here. But it's something to certainly monitor. The club versus country row, the way players are released, how this little tug of war plays out. It's certainly something to monitor. Remember, Jebison is just on loan at Preston as well. So something to keep in mind. I wonder what the people at Bournemouth think about that as well. But the player will be missed, but an opportunity for Bair, and an opportunity again in this window with a number of key players out for Marsch and his staff to really try some things, give some players an extended look who maybe haven't had a lot of run, and just try to figure out potential solutions to problems which may arise in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think too with Daniel Jebison, it's maybe good for him as well, this timing of just watching those first few Preston games. He hasn't quite looked the greatest. He looks a bit out of sync with his new teammates. I think just, missing a few weeks of preseason due to that injury, it kind of just threw him out of rhythm. It's not the worst thing in the world for him to stay back, to start to get that chemistry. They believe in him. They've been starting him right away as soon as he's come back from this injury. He just needs to get into form. And I think that's what's going to help him most for Canada. We kind of saw at times in the summer, it's a player where there's a lot of potential. There's good moments, but he needs to build his confidence. He needs to, continue to iron out the game in a way that you need minutes, right? Because he just hasn't played a lot with the health concerns. So I think this is also one where Jesse Marsch wasn't going to fight it. Like, we really need the player. It's a September window. It's friendlies. You can call in another striker, Theo Bair, who you haven't seen in a while, who himself just made, a move to try to elevate his career ahead of the World Cup. And then, you revisit it in October and maybe you give Jebison a look when he's hopefully in better form and has banged in a few goals for Preston.
Yeah, because there's a lot of competition happening on the field, and we've been keeping an eye up front in particular, right, who's going to be playing alongside Jonathan David. And we know Cyle Larin in the past, that has been his starting role, but it was really important for him to make a move. And with the transfer window officially closing, a lot of Canadian internationals have done just that. And Fabrizio Romano reporting, right, that Cyle Larin to Feyenoord, and he has agreed to this deal to move from Mallorca to there. And I'm wondering, if you feel Wheels that a move from La Liga to Eredivisie is a good one for Larin, maybe even just as a professional, but also just in the eyes of Jesse Marsch here in the national team and World Cup less than a year away.
Yeah, it's a step down, but I'm not really looking at it that way. The Eredivisie is still a good league, and Feyenoord, one of the top sides. The team that's top of the table, 3 wins from 3 to start the season. They're going to be playing in the Europa League, and they need attacking options. And when Robin Van Persie calls and is having a conversation with you, I think that you listen. And I think that that's what the manager has in store. It's very interesting that Van Persie says that Larin will have to compete for a spot. Ayase Ueda, Japanese international strikers, the preferred choice leading the line right now. He's decent enough, but I think it's a level and a team that Larin will be afforded the chance to play a lot of football. And at Mallorca, he only started 9 of his last 18 games. It wasn't really an attack-minded side. With Feyenoord, they're a side that plays on the front foot in the Eredivisie, and he's going to be able to get out there and hopefully be the best version of Cyle Larin. I just didn't like the move to Mallorca from the off. Just the club and the football they play and maybe Larin's situation at that point. So I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily that he's taking a step back in terms of quality of leagues, because he's going to a big club, a club year in, year out is competing right at the top of that table, which does come with pressure, which is a good thing. He will be competing for minutes, so it should hopefully keep him sharp. And playing in multiple competitions means that there's a lot of football to be played as well. So overall, I think it's a decent enough move for Cyle Larin. I'm happy he stays there rather than coming back to North America at this juncture. I just think that this is a decent compromise for Larin at this point to get right back on track.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good lateral move for him. I think, you're maybe losing a bit in terms of the overall league, going from a top 5 league to the Eredivisie. At the same time, when you go from a mid-table team in a top 5 league to a team at the top of another league, you get trade-offs. Now he's going to be competing for silverware with Feyenoord. Now you're in Europa League, and you're going to be playing some good teams. I think their first matchup is against Aston Villa, which is going to be a good little test. That helps you with minutes, with rotation. They do play with one striker up front, so I am curious to see how he's able to win minutes if he's going to be more of a super sub. If Robin van Persie maybe tries him out, as we know in the past, Larin can play in a bit of different positions off the striker as well, but he's going to have competition. Maybe that's going to be a good way to push him, and there's going to be minutes up for grabs. And plus, we have to remember, with one thing that I've never really liked in La Liga for him, even when he's been scoring goals, he just doesn't see a lot of the ball. Even that stint at Valladolid a few years ago when he was scoring for fun, he'd be having games with 20, 30 touches. He scores a goal, great. Now in the Eredivisie, when you're a team like Feyenoord, you're going to dominate most of your games. You're going to get involved in the play. You're going to get touches. And I think that's going to do wonders for his confidence, because when he had some of his best seasons at like a Besiktas, he was getting really involved in the play and seeing a lot of the ball. So I do like that aspect of it, that can help build his confidence instead of spending 90 minutes with a defender draped on your back and you're getting 10, 20 touches.
Well, I'm sure he can feel a lot of people right behind him as well with this national team, as we mentioned, right? Just this competition that's happening for a starting position up front next to Jonathan David. Theo Bair, as we mentioned, gets the call in. Daniel Jebbison, hearing from Preston, dealing with that ankle injury. He's making a move from Ligue 1 to the Swiss Super League. What kind of success wheels would Bair need to have in Switzerland in order to earn a World Cup roster spot?
He basically needs to regain the form that he had playing in the Scottish Premiership, quite frankly, where he's scoring a goal every game or two, because it's a significant drop down in level, but he simply wasn't producing in Ligue 1 for Auxerre. He only scored twice across 31 games. So perhaps this is just a reset of his level. Perhaps he's somewhere in between, maybe not quite capable of being that effective player at a Ligue 1 level, but the Swiss Super League is certainly a step down. And again, it's a decent enough club there at a good level. He just needs to get back to playing and scoring goals. And that's the most important thing to get it back on track. I still think he's done well. A lot of people had written off Theo Bair a couple of years ago, and he's done well to kind of resurrect his career, and he's still going to be playing at a competitive level, but he's on the fringes of this team right now. The fact that he's just being called in ahead of Daniel Jebbison, there's no guarantees that he's going to be right there come the World Cup time next year. So when he goes into camp, he just needs to be a good teammate, needs to show that he's sharp, he's fit, and needs to show that at the club level as well. I put him in the same bucket as like a Jason Russell-Rowe, like players like this who are kind of on the outside looking in, but certainly with a good campaign, a good season, he can put himself very much part of that conversation. You know that there's going to be injuries, there's going to be issues between now and the World Cup. So it's his job just to go to a place where he can play a lot of football and start scoring those goals again.
Yeah, I think one thing that Theo Bair brings to that's worth remembering is there's no one like him in the striker pool. There's no other 6'4" guys who can come off the bench and bring that sort of size. So for Jesse Marsh,
Promise David now.
Yes, yeah, Promise David is there, and that's one of them. But with Theo Bair, what's worth watching is Canada hasn't had a whole lot of goals from their substitutes. That's been an issue they've had. I think it's off the top of my head 3 they've had under Jesse Marsh out of the 20 plus goals they've scored. For Theo Bair, if he can find some form in Switzerland, that just gives something different for Jesse Marsh, where you can look down the bench at, like you mentioned, Wheels, Promise David, 6'4". I almost forget he's 6'4" because he doesn't play like it sometimes, the way he can run in behind. But same with Theo Bair. We forget some of the goals he was scoring in Scotland. He's got some great athleticism in terms of his speed for a guy his size, along with the technical ability. So in Switzerland, just see that confidence, because when he was at Motherwell, some of the goals he was scoring, dropping defenders, chipping guys, showing that he's not just a 6'4" guy that's going to go in the box and score headers. But Switzerland, the level is okay. What helps them is Lausanne Sport, actually a really interesting club. Like, the Swiss league's changed a lot recently. Basel hasn't dominated as much. I know last year they had a bit of a resurgence, but Lausanne Sport 3 years ago, they were playing in the second tier. This year they're playing in Europe at the Conference League, which is pretty cool experience for Theo Bair, that he's going to get a little bit of European football. So for him, if he can get, like, with the level, I'd push for 15 goals, I think would really be a good benchmark. If you're hitting 15, I think Jesse Marsh is going to have some tougher discussions to think about. Maybe have some fun in Europe and put yourself out there. And I think his unique profile could make things interesting, where if you're looking at a battle between a Jebison and a Bair, profile could come into play. And Bair does have an interesting one.
Well, this is it. We know Jesse Marsh has said there are battles everywhere on the pitch, and up front is going to be a really interesting one on who will get that chance to play alongside Jonathan David, at least get that start. And maybe a lot of things will become a little bit clearer during these international friendlies.